In a world where information seems to travel at the speed of light and traffic at a snail's pace, where the agenda of those at the helm doesn't always reflect the pressures on the streets, where the rubber hits the road, where there's queue of issues needing to be interrogated in the name of speaking truth to power.
Welcome to a place at the table,
where we set the agenda,
table the issues that matter to you,
and invite you to take a seat at the table.
Welcome to a place at the table. It's good to be back. To chart the way forward, we need to ensure we have a clear vision. My advocacy today is titled A Windfall or a Windfall. Go figure. Welcome to the table, Esther.
Thank you, Yinka. Windfall or windfall. This stuff is right up my alley. I'll be navigating identical territory as I lay out a vision for economic productivity.
Welcome, Esther. Yinka, seems like you met your match. I'll be dealing with issues of rebuilding trust between the people and its government. I'm sure you all agree it's timely, right? Nwamaka, good to have you on the show.
Music to my ears, Bright. It's good to be here. I'll be tackling an identical issue of trust, but my recommendations may be more directed. I'm saying the INEC Chairman must be held accountable. Deji, what do you say?
We've only just met, Nwamaka, and it's like you're attempting to read my mind. Suffice to say that I share the concerns raised around trust. I'll be tackling the sustained problem of crude oil theft in the Niger Delta.
All right. Fresh panelists, fresh topics, similar passion for progress and development. Have we ever disappointed? No be today. On July 17th, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu requested the Senate to amend the 2024 Appropriation Act by adding 6.2 trillion to fund infrastructure development, education, healthcare, and welfare initiatives. To fund this, he requested an amendment to the Finance Act 2023 by imposing a 50% windfall tax on realized profit of FX transactions of banks. The Senate subsequently increased the percentage to 70% and passed the bill. There's a lot to unpack here, but let me start with the obvious. What is a windfall tax? A windfall tax is a one-time tax imposed on companies that have experienced unexpected and significant gains, often due to extraordinary circumstances. They are usually levied to redistribute the unexpected wealth, generate revenue, and ensure equity. Windfall taxes are not peculiar to Nigeria. For instance, in May 2022, the UK imposed a windfall tax of 25% on energy profits. Also in August 2023, Italy imposed a windfall tax on profit earned by banks from high interest rates. Many have argued whether the windfall tax is justified or not. For me, the question should be, with a total budget deficit of 16 trillion, can the windfall tax fund this? The answer is no. According to Nairametrics, banks made a total pre-tax income of 3.7 trillion in 2003, representing a 197% increase from 2022. Out of this amount, about 1 trillion was due to revaluation gains from FX. With a 70% windfall tax, while factoring the 33% company income tax already paid, inclusive of FX gains, the best government can hope for is about 500 billion, which is merely 3% of the budget deficit. So how does government intend to fund the rest? There are other issues with this windfall tax that should be of concern, like the retrospective application of tax law, double taxation, and the disincentive to investors at the time of bank recapitalization. Unlike Femi Otedola, I'm less concerned about bank executives buying private jets as short-changing shareholders. I'm more worried about our debt sustainability. If this windfall tax cannot fund a material part of the budget deficit, then what exactly is the plan?
So, first, in my view, I'm against this tax because we cannot just keep moving from one tax regime to the other. It shows that government policy is extremely weak. Again, I think what the Senate did by jacking it up is too exorbitant, because if it was at maybe 30%, I'll say, okay, fair enough. The banks they are living extravagant lifestyle, you know, so government is trying to rein them in and get some resources for the poor in the country. But 70%, that's outrageous. What does the government do for business owners in Nigeria? Practically nothing. Many of these banks and these businesses, they provide their own electricity, provide their own water. They do almost everything. The government does nothing in return. So paying tax, because the Constitution has placed specific obligations on the government. And so when government fails to meet its objectives and its obligations, government should not expect citizens to go overboard in trying to meet theirs. So we have a country where things just don't work. And, you know, in making the economy run smoothly, because these banks, there are workers in these banks who are Nigerians who are putting in the work. These profits should be shared to shareholders. Government is not a shareholder in these banks. They're already paying CIT and so many other taxes. And that's why we keep talking about multiplicity of taxes in the country. It's not good for any economy. That's why businesses are leaving the country.
I have a slightly different opinion on that. I do not have an issue with the windfall tax, because if most of the money came from the, the change in the value of the foreign exchange, then the government should get some of that value, I believe. However, the question for me in all this is, what kind of business environment or climate is the government creating? There is instability. You never know what's going to happen today or tomorrow if you're running a business in Nigeria, and that is a challenge. That's one. The second thing, as you mentioned, is where's the rest of the money coming? Something is wrong with the budget if you don't know how you're going to fund it. And it has to be something that's sustainable. So we need to trust the government that they know what they're doing. And in doing so, they have to show us where the money is going to come from. So I agree with you. And look at ways to cut. They need to look at ways to cut expenses. Because you can either increase your profit or reduce your expenses, or you do both. And the way we're seeing it right now, as a Nigerian, I'm not seeing sufficient effort on the part of the government to reduce its expenses. And so when you come and pose the entire burden on the people, then it's a problem.
For me, the question really is around when they take this money from the banks, how is it going to be spent? So is it going to be spent on capital projects, okay, that will benefit all of us on this table and everyone watching the show? Or is it going to be spent on the regular recurrent expenditure, which is really all about paying salaries and all, right? So I think that's where we should be focused on. The truth is that the banks will be fine, okay? If we're getting money from industries like manufacturing that are already bleeding, then I will sit on this table and say, no, we don't want that.
The banks are nobody's friends.
Yeah, the banks, I think the banks are strong, they're resilient, although we don't want to, overstretch them, right? So they will be able to pay, but we need to keep our eyes on where the money is going to and what it will be used for.
All right, so before Bright comes in, I just want to emphasize that when the banks made huge revaluation profits from FX, the manufacturing sector was experiencing the exact opposite. Huge FX losses. So essentially, this is about redistribution of that.
So for me, I think I have more questions than even answers. The first thing is, what do they put into consideration when they're coming up with this budget, right? Are you looking at what all the different points that we generate revenues? Are you also looking at the fact that we've, over time, not invested in those points that we can generate revenues? We're talking to the banks. We're talking about the banks now making more profits. We also know that the banks are also the infrastructure that is being used for corruption, right? So there's a lot of that money that actually comes from corruption, right? And then when we talk about how we're going to get the rest of the money, because like you said, apart from the banks, what other points, what other industries are having this, extra profits apart from the banks? If you're saying this is what we want to rely on, like you said in your advocacy, 500 billion is probably what's going to be left. That's not going to do anything compared to what is available. I think my suggestion would be, like she said, instead of focusing on a particular sector to provide this fund, Identify all of the different sectors that you can invest in more to increase revenue stream for the country. When it comes to, I mean, it's one of our advocacies, when it comes to human capital development, we have a lot of young people, a lot of people in general, over 250 million people, that most of them don't have jobs, they don't have the skills to be able to add some kind of value. When you go to rural communities, if you find young, healthy people driving bikes, driving keke, imagine if you're able to increase their skills and their capacity, how much money they can generate.
I think you're already getting into Esther's territory.
Yeah, so I feel like we should kind of like focus more on, even if at the end of the day we're able to get a certain level of, when we're designing this budget, how much do we invest in things that can give us more returns?
What I'm seeing is like Nigeria is like a patient in trauma. And so you have the trauma team. They're trying to, ensure that the heart is still beating. There's a bleeding, they're trying to stop the bleeding. And they're doing several things that are needed. But then someone comes in and saying, you know what, I think this person's fingernail is broken. Let me start doing a manicure. You're going to look at that person and say, what's going on with you? Why are you doing this now? Only the essential things need to be dealt with at this point. And even the things that will ensure the person lives to the next minute or hour, and then also ensuring that in what you're doing, you don't jeopardize their long-term health. And I feel like maybe the view is not being taken like that, and that's why we're having such a huge budget. Who's going to pay for it?
All right, okay. Balancing the books is critical to the stability of our nation. I know that Esther will agree with me.
I do agree, and increased productivity has a major role to play in this. Pay close attention. I have a few things to say on the matter after the break. What if we could get Nigeria to be one of the most productive nations in the world? Did I see you roll your eyes? Hold on. I know Nigeria is one of the highest unemployment rates globally, as at 2020 when it was at 33.3%. Until it was revised actually last year to about 5%. And there have been lots of debates around this efficacy in terms of the revision. But let's consider the possibility of making Nigeria a more productive country. We can start with understanding how productivity is measured. In simple words, it's how much resources or inputs are required to generate outputs. According to the International Labour Organization, Nigeria's labor productivity is one of the lowest globally at barely $7, relative to other countries at about $50 and above. This, of course, contributes to the stunted economic growth we see. Productivity is key for economic development, and research has shown that it is driven by 4 interrelated components: innovation, efficiency in allocation and use of resources, fiscal and institutional infrastructure, and education. Let's simplify this. What really can Nigeria do to increase its productivity? I'll give you 4 of them, and there are, of course, more. The first is technology and innovation. We need to think of smarter ways of doing things. For every tax and transaction, pause and think. Is there a smarter way to do this? Many times the solution lies in technology. The second is favorable business environment. Yes, government has its part to play in improving the business climate of Nigeria. The government needs to make it easier to do business in Nigeria. The third is a healthier workforce, and this goes beyond government. It reaches private organizations and business owners. Really, how many of us have our workers in an HMO, right? Many health maintenance organizations have made health insurance more flexible and affordable. Please, let's go the extra mile and enroll our workers. A healthier workforce is more productive and will help our businesses grow. The last but very important is education. We can't increase productivity without strengthening our educational system. Our schools need to equip students with suitable skills that enables them to add real value. You certainly will agree with me that improved productivity enables organizations to produce greater outputs, earn higher revenues, and ultimately economic growth and prosperity. Let's be a part of increasing Nigeria's productivity just where we are.
So I'm a manufacturer. And so a lot of what you're saying hits home.
Okay.
And my observations, or one of the critical issues we have is our educational system. Specifically, developing critical thinking skills. That is a huge challenge. Our educational system doesn't seem to be focused on developing critical thinking skills. And that results in a lack of productivity. Because no matter how well you plan things, there will always be challenges. Is an individual able to apply their thinking skills to outcomes, to the intended outcome, if things go just a little bit off the way they ought to be? Another thing is, there seems to be a disconnect between what is policy and what should be implemented. And so there's a culture where we believe that this is what is on paper, but now that we're here, let us now do, this is the cocoa, let's do the real thing. That's a problem because people think through processes and systems and design them, and it's meant to be followed. When people feel like the system is just for decoration or show, you find out there will be a lack of productivity and a lot of waste.
We live in a society that these people, when it comes to how we design projects, even whether government or private sector or development agencies, it's like a charity case. Right? We want to support 500,000 young people. Let's train them in tailoring, in carpentry, let's send them to the farm. And if you keep looking at this situation from that perspective, if you're investing in the sense of I'm giving back, instead of investing in the sense of I want return, there are two different approaches. So when I look at all the different government programs from Goodluck Jonathan's time, from the UWIN to the Shopee to the Empower, it's just, oh, we have a lot of unemployed youth, let's empower them, let's train them. No, let's invest in them so that they can also turn around to become revenue generation. Their skills can now be used to increase our economy. Second is, we don't create long-term projects. Most of the things that we do, we focus on quick wins. There are lots of things, industries that we can focus on, like you said, technology is one. Sports. I mean, look at how much we can generate from just sporting events. And also, because we also have the number of people that we can work with. Then the creative economy, that's actually booming by itself right now, and it has nothing to do with the government. It's just young people saying, you know what, I can do short videos. Then we're talking about agriculture. We could literally become the food basket of the world if we decide to put a better structure around how we support farmers, we create, we provide tools and equipment to provide the training that's required for them to be able to, use their skills to get the best output.
You see, the United States of America, they have the highest number of millionaires in the entire world. They have about 24.4 million millionaires. Then China is next with about 6.2 million millionaires. We're talking about millionaires in dollars. In dollars. So the more rich citizens you have, the more wealthy the nation is. Because by implication, what it means is that citizens are able to pay more taxes to meet their obligations as citizens, as responsible citizens, and government is able to get the resources to meet basic needs. And yes, I agree with you when you talk about funds generation. There's a whole lot of money to generate. One of the most fundamental ways of generating funds in Nigeria, in regards to my own advocacy here today, which has to do with refining of crude oil. Nigeria should be not just the West African hub for refining petroleum products, but the entire continent. Imagine the number of effects we can create for our economy. Imagine the inflow and the tourism that will bring to the economy. Another sector that can generate a lot of money is aviation. Nigeria has a population of over 200 million people. Every day you go to the airport, whether it's in the night, in the afternoon, in the morning, whether it is domestic or international, the airport is jam-packed because we have too many people who are in the nation who are upwardly mobile and who are moving. Look at the African map. the country, our country strategically in the middle of it all. So this should be an aviation hub to the entire continent. You know, Nigerians have to fly to Addis on Ethiopia Air. We give so much money and FX to that country.
You're not going to Lome.
Yes, Nigeria even go to Lome. So why can't we think out of the box? We already have, because billionaires, the Warren Buffetts, Bill Gates, and the billionaires of this world, they see a business opportunity. The market is there.
They invest.
And they meet the demand that is readily there. We have the market, we have the business opportunity here. Why can't, because aviation can generate enough money to tackle our deficit in our budget. But we are not doing it because we have a leadership problem. Why does a governor need a 25-car convoy to be on the road? Why does the president need a 100-car convoy to be on the road? Why does the principal officers of the National Assembly, why do they need 2,000 aides? What for? In an underdeveloped nation, Nigeria is not a developing nation, Nigeria is an underdeveloped nation. So we need, Nigeria is a prodigal son, living above his means and living extravagantly. And it cannot continue to thrive if it goes on this path.
The key here is that we must look at how do we get that number up? How do we get the productivity of every Nigerian up? And I think that, you know, you have touched on every important point. You know, education, you know, it's so important. I mean, look at the literacy rate in the UK. The UK is about almost over 90%. In the US is about 80%. So when you look at development and the literacy rate, you can almost see that, you know, it's at par. So the more educated your citizenry, the more developed your country will be, and it will answer to your question about critical thinking. You know, at the same time. But there's one part of your advocacy that I think that you missed out. You know, in terms of contribution to development, and I think that is power and energy, how it plays in Nigeria. Because you see, the thing is this: the average Nigerian, you know, it's not every Nigerian should go to the university. You don't need to do that. Not every Nigerian should go to higher education. I mean, sometimes secondary school education is just fine. But you see, the thing is, the productive capacity of Nigerian is hindered because of his lack of access to power.
I like that we're looking at it not just from what the government can do, but what we can also do. Because government has its part to play, but we also have our part to play, right? So no one gets to sit on the sidelines.
It takes a team effort, is what we are used to hearing. But what happens when trust is broken? How does that team function effectively? Last week, I was invited to attend the House of Representatives Town Hall to discuss the future of our country. The youth expressed their disappointment with the government and engaged in dialogue with the leaders. Here are my key takeaways from that meeting. Number one, lack of communication. The government has not been transparent with the people, and communication is a critical tool in leadership. The town hall was the first of its kind, which is concerning. Many programs and initiatives presented by the ministers were unknown to most of the attendees. If the leaders of youth groups and organizations are unaware of government initiatives, how can they be communicated to people in rural areas? Number two, erosion of trust. There's a widespread lack of trust in the government. The first step this administration should have taken is building trust, starting with an open government. Transparency and accountability at all levels of leadership are essential. Number three, equal opportunities. Many people feel marginalized. We need a country where the son or a daughter of nobody can become somebody. Until we achieve this, people will continue to distrust the government. Number four, disconnection from the people's struggle. Many leaders are disconnected from the current hardship facing the population, making it difficult for them to address the issue at hand. Number five, empathy in leadership. Empathy is a crucial aspect of leadership. Leaders should demonstrate empathy and genuinely care about what the people are going through. They should put themselves in the shoes of the people and show that they are working to solve the problem instead of blaming the opposition for instigating protest and discrediting the people's genuine concerns. It's also heartless for the opposition to exploit people's pain. This behavior is disgusting and shows that they are no better. These were my observations and suggestions. It is clear that the pathway to a better Nigeria requires a commitment from both the government and its citizens. By fostering a culture of transparency, promoting equal opportunities, and practicing empathetic leadership, we can start to rebuild trust and ensure a prosperous future for all of us.
Trust is built over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something you do. It's an intentional act, right? And I love the points you brought out in terms of why trust has reduced over time. And I just want to focus on two of them. The first will be the disconnection from people, right? I don't want to blame anybody. Ask somebody that wasn't the CEO before, when he becomes the CEO of an organization, does he truly know what's going on? Not necessarily. But you know, that's why we have managers, okay? And the managers I see that I like what's going on in Nigeria now is the local government chairperson. So the local government autonomy. Is it an opportunity for the government to be able to gain the trust of the people at the grass level? It could be, or it could even be an obstacle, right? And time will tell. So in terms of that disconnection with people, we really need our government to be closer to the people. It could be via the local government, like I said. The second is around the lack of communication. And I think it's not just even, government needs to communicate more, but there's also the other side of it in terms of misinformation on social media. So even if government is trying to communicate, we see things, all of us see things on WhatsApp, on many social media platforms, which are not necessarily what the government is saying. So there's also that battle of miscommunication that is all over. And so even when we see governments make some efforts, miscommunication just drives home the wrong points.
And so I just highlighted three things from your advocacy. One is the communication you spoke about. Government is still stuck in the 80s right? You know those times in the 80s where all you need to do is put something on the NTA.
Thank you.
And that's it. And then you go to sleep.
Somebody has to say this because I can't add anything to my advocacy. Somebody has to
it's like, you just put something on it, because, when we tell government that you're not communicating, it's, but it's on the website.
It's on the website.
On the issue of trust, there's a huge trust deficit. And I'll tell you something that just happened recently. Recently, this week, the CBN reached out to banks and said, okay, we want to know what's the demand of FX of your clients. All right, send it to us. And then we intend to fund the market. Now, the banks send those information to clients to say, okay, the CBN wants to fund the market. Send us your bids. And by the way, you have to back it up with cash. Now, because of the huge trust deficit we have, of the government, most of the customers said, I'm not so sure that I'm going to go and put my cash there because it can be stocked for the next 1 year. I mean, the CBN can go and say, sell to you one forward, and then they only deliver in 1 year. So what happened was, instead of many clients really pushing their bids through, they just push the bid. So let me see what's going to happen. And guess what happened? The CBN funded virtually almost 100% of the bids, over 800 million plus, because people. And then when people realize that it's too late, they're like, oh, should I put in there? And why? It's the trust deficit. It's as simple as that. And then finally, empathy. Wise man once said, empathy is more valuable than competence. I would say that empathy with competence is the winning formula. Our leadership needs to be empathetic. Sometimes when you see the way some of our leaders talk, I don't want to mention some names of some leaders in the current issue around the protest and how they spoke.
Just mention Akpabio. We all know what you're referring to.
It's like, you wonder that, do they think sometimes about the people, the one who is not able to feed the family.
I just want to kind of like highlight some of the things you said about communication. I mean, look at what's going on in America right now. You discover that Trump is doing stuff with Logan. Logan's one of the top influencers. He was on a live stream 2 days ago on Aiden's live stream. Aiden's like this guy that goes online and just shows his entire life. Trump was at his live stream talking about different things, playing all the Gen Z games and talking about what he wants to do for that group of people.
So I wonder, could it be that Trump believes that he needs the votes of the people, so he's appealing to them? And could it be that our leaders do not believe that they do? Yeah. Maybe they believe they don't need us. Because for you to earn someone's trust, you have to value them and then work at that trust.
Yeah.
You build it intentionally, as you mentioned. So if I believe you have nothing of value to add to me, why do I need to bother with trying to build trust? I believe that our leaders are showing what value they have for us.
By how they
through the
communicate to us.
efforts, yes, they put at communicating. If they believe that they need cooperation and that whatever it is that they communicate or how they treat us counts next time, then they would work hard to earn the trust. But if deep within they believe that it is not necessary, then their actions will speak. Yeah. They say actions speak louder than words, and it's speaking really loudly.
When you are genuinely working for the people can see it. There's no amount of communication in this world that will be enough to assuage people from coming to the street to protest, because the prices in the market don't reflect that this country is working. How can this president came on board? He moved dollar from 600 and something naira to 16. So what do you want him to communicate to the people? He should communicate how he moved dollar from 600 to 16. This president moved a carton of Indomie from 4.5 to over 10,000. So he should come and communicate to the Nigerian people how he moved price of Indomie. He moved a crate of egg from 1,400 naira to about 5,000 naira.
Don't you think we are? I mean, when you craft it in such manner, I think that's part of the misinformation that you're talking about.
Misinformation? How?
No. I think we need to be very,
Yeah, coming back to what...
It's a crate of egg, not 5,000 naira.
No.
How is that misinformation? So day one of this president, he removed first subsidy. He told the Nigerian people that they must make sacrifices. The Nigerian people started making sacrifice on day one. Fuel that was selling for 165 naira, they started buying it for almost 700 naira. So
when Babangida came into power, there was the similar situation where the country was broke. And then he had town hall meetings. I said, guys, we can either do this or we can either take the IMF loan. If you take the IMF loan, this is what's going to happen. What do you guys think we should do? I think we need to get to a point where we stop trying to fix the symptoms and actually focus on the cause. Because other governments have been fixing the symptoms. Oh, we have this issue. Oh, let's give them rice. They came with the intention to fix the cause, but if
this government is a rice-sharing government.
No, sorry.
We ask for fuel, they give us rice.
If you're intentional,
we ask for
if you're intentional, sorry,
they give us rice. Even now, in the middle of this protest, this government is sharing rice.
What point?
I'm deeply troubled that we are mentioning, or some people are mentioning, Babangida's government with nostalgia. It shows you how low we have fallen. I lived through that era.
Oh my God.
And now it's an example for good.
But this government has not done anything. This government went to paint Third Mainland Bridge that was built by Babangida. They painted it and commissioned it. This government.
They did work there though. Okay, I'm optimistic because nation building is impossible without a sense of, I dare to say, renewed hope.
Renewed shaggy.
The 2023 presidential elections in Nigeria were marred by widespread controversy and allegations of misconduct. The system was tested and failed. So we must challenge the system. A key failure was the non-transmission of many election results electronically, despite repeated assurances by the INEC Chairman that this would be done on election day. This failure to fulfill a central promise undermined the credibility of the electoral process and raised suspicions of possible result manipulation. The failed promise to transmit results electronically was a broken contract with the Nigerian people. Additionally, there were numerous reports of logistical failures, including the delayed arrival of election materials and malfunctioning of the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS. Such logistical issues not only disrupted the voting process, but also disenfranchised many eligible voters, casting further doubt on the election's credibility. The INEC Chairman, as the head of the electoral body, bears ultimate responsibility for these operational shortcomings. Moreover, there were widespread allegations of electoral malpractice, including vote buying, ballot stuffing, and tampering with results. These allegations were particularly pronounced in key battleground states, where the margin of victory was notably slim. The perceived inability or unwillingness of INEC under its current leadership to address these issues transparently has eroded public trust in the electoral process. In the light of these failures, it is also crucial to call for a comprehensive review of the process of appointing an INEC chairman. Ensuring that the appointment process is transparent, merit-based, and independent can help prevent further leadership failures. How can one expect a fair game when the captain of one team appoints the umpire? Additionally, a thorough review of the wording of the 2022 Electoral Act is necessary. Clear and unambiguous language in the Act will strengthen its implementation and enhance the overall integrity of the electoral process. Finally, for the sake of Nigeria's democratic integrity, it is imperative that the leadership of INEC be held accountable and reformed. Removing the current INEC chairman, reviewing the appointment process, and ensuring the robustness of the Electoral Act are crucial steps to restore public faith in Nigeria's electoral system.
We have been involved for years, if not even decades now, advocating for electoral reform in this country. The last electoral amendment, we were very instrumental to its passage with my late friend, Comrade Ariodare Atoye. May his soul rest in peace. I know what we went through with this current INEC and the former National Assembly to get the amendment passed. You know, and sometimes I just sit back and I watch this country. Every election cycle, we always come back to this dance of, oh, let's amend the Electoral Act. And after the amendment, politicians find a way to beat the system, which is what they did in this last election. Then sometimes they go to court, and the court just say, yes, they are right. They've surpassed it. After all, electronic transmission of results is not a requirement. The wording of the act suggests that it's not mandatory. Having said that, it's also important to note that it's not just about INEC chairman. There's this problem with the Nigerian people, this idea of getting rich quick, this syndrome of, I must make 'em. My pastor don't talk, say I go make 'em. So, and because the INEC chairman is just one individual in INEC, it's the whole system in INEC. And the appointments procedure of the national commissioners in INEC, I can tell you for free, go and fact check me. Majority of the national commissioners in INEC are APC card carrying member. I am in court with one of them from Bayelsa, a professor, who is an APC card carrying member. I took her to court, her and the former president. Why will you appoint an APC card carrying member as... So the political actors remove the word independent and they replace it with partisanship. If the people in my polling unit have determined in their mind that today there will be no rigging in this polling unit or in this ward, nobody can rig an election in any part of Nigeria. Even Obasanjo in his prime had to concede Kano, had to concede Lagos, had to concede certain states because security report was that if you rig this election in Kano, Kano will burn.
I'm one of the people that followed my ballot box to the collation center, stayed to count it so it would not be rigged. And my group was there till midnight until police were sent to move us away to ensure that the results were transmitted. They were never transmitted. And so it was with arms that we were pursued. And many Nigerians in 2023 behaved that way.
And everything that happens to us right now, the situation that we're in right now in this country begins with that election, with any election. And if we're not able to solve it from that place, because like you said, the police was involved in chasing you guys. And then there's also people who sell their votes. Most of them are actually out to protest now after selling their votes, right? So it's like, you can't do the same thing and expect a different result. It's delusional, right? So first of all, we need to really put all our strength to focus on making sure that the next 4 years, we're able to advocate to make sure that all the right structures are in place. And it begins with, like you said, you can't have the running party choosing who the INEC chairman is or but it just, in what world does that even make sense?
Interestingly, I actually see progress that has been made in our electoral system, right? And I remember trying to vote like over a decade ago, and how difficult it was, okay? And now it's less difficult. Let's give it to them, right? In terms of that progress that's made. Does that mean there's still a massive gap? And I don't want us to wait till it's almost time for the elections, like you said, right? We need to be involved from the very beginning. There's going to be election in a state, in Edo State, in how many months from now, right? Many of us, because we are not there, it doesn't concern me. But can we ensure that it's done right even at the state levels, right? And if it's done right, then it can be replicated. So there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, I was one of those in my community. We came out, we waited and all, we gathered our people to make sure things were done right and all. And I can see that increasing. And I'm already telling, I mean, for those of us that have children that will soon turn 18 and all, this is the time for us to begin to educate them on the importance of voting and ensure that they've not switched out. They might still be here, but they've not switched out on the country, right? So each of us have our place. We have our work to do, right? Of course, the Electoral Act, we need it, like you said, to be more robust. We can't hold only INEC responsible. This country is big. When you say 200 million people, and of course, not everybody is voting, but there are a lot of people. So can we be, in quotes, the INEC in our own place?
The whole process of appointing the umpire itself, that whole process must be taken away from the ruling party. The PDP did that at the onset because they expected to rule forever. So they put in structures, you know, that ensuring that they were able to just keep, you know, getting this thing. A lot of the INEC national commissioners were also PDP carrying members at the same time. And when the opposition came in and they just replaced, they followed the same playbook and just switched, you understand? So we need to make sure that the Electoral Act enshrined that, probably even a constitutional amendment to take away that right from the ruling party to appoint. Create an independent process where the INEC chairman and all the national commissioners, not just the INEC chairman, because the INEC chairman is just one guy, all right? All those national commissioners that are installed in states, they are actually really the main guys.
The point of taking roles is to say, yes, I'm accountable for this, and I will do it. And I think we should call a spade a spade. A lot of good was done. However, at the end of the day, most of the challenges were in INEC's custody. Most of the failures were things that were in INEC's domain. It needs to be addressed. Even if there's an inquiry, and then let us do the inquiry and come up with the results and see what happens.
Crude oil theft in Nigeria is not just about the theft of a valuable resource, but reflects deeper systematic issues within the country's leadership and governance. Nigeria is one of Africa's largest oil producers, yet it faces significant challenges with crude oil theft. Criminal cartels and organized groups steal a substantial portion of the country's daily oil production, Recent high-profile incidents, including disputes involving NNPC and Aliko Dangote, the oil giant, have drawn attention to the problem and fueled suspicions of deeper underlying issues. Nigeria loses billions of dollars annually to stolen crude oil theft, which significantly affects national revenue and economic stability. These revenue loss undermines the country's ability to fund essential services and infrastructure. The theft perpetuated a cycle of poverty and delusionment among ordinary Nigerians while enriching those in power or involved in the illegal trade. There are serious allegations of collusion between government officials and those involved in oil theft. Reports and evidence, including an authenticated video showing Nigerian naval vessels protecting oil theft operations, suggest that some officials may be complicit in or negligent about the theft. This points to a systemic problem where those entrusted with safeguarding national resources are instead facilitating their exploitation. Civil society efforts have been crucial in highlighting the issues and demanding accountability, but without significant governmental reform and enforcement, these efforts alone cannot resolve the crisis. To combat oil theft in the Niger Delta and its underlying causes, Nigeria requires strong leadership, transparency, and accountability. Addressing these challenges is crucial for ensuring that the country can harness its oil wealth for the benefit of all its citizens and build a more just and prosperous society.
All right, so oil theft, the biggest issue in terms of impacting our revenue in Nigeria. It was so bad at some point we were producing less than 1 million barrels per day. So bad. And it got to the point where even when oil prices were high and Nigeria should have benefited from that, we were not, getting anything. Today we understand that the production is somewhere around the 1.6 to 1.7 million barrels per day, which is good, but it still is a big, big issue. Now, my take is that there cannot be any oil theft in this country without collusion of government. It's impossible.
Correct.
Because you cannot move 200, 300, 1,000, whatever. That scale without, the kind of vessel you will need for that kind of movement. There's no way you can do it without collusion of people in government, people in the Navy, because you have to move those through high waters, no matter what you do. And so that comes to that basically aligns with, your advocacy that to solve this problem, the government has to really look inwards. The reality is that the criminal is inside the house, not outside. And coming out to Nigerians tell us that we have oil theft, yes, fine. But the problem is that the people who are supposed to police the waters have actually been benefiting from it significantly. So for me, I always, I know that we speak so much about solutions to this. How do we solve? The question I ask myself is, how do you solve a problem of theft? So it's not a policy issue. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, Esther. It's not a policy issue of saying, it's a question of just ensuring that what we produce is not in some way siphoned by criminal elements. And it's not so difficult. This oil ends up somewhere, okay? It ends up somewhere. I saw a video once of the control room of, is that Aramco in Saudi Arabia, and they're able to track every liter of crude oil.
We have the same facilities here.
So the question for us, so the question for me is, who is benefiting from this, and why can't we solve it?
The president knows the people stealing the crude oil. I'm telling you. The president and all the security agencies know the people stealing our crude oil. I can tell you that for a fact. Because we have a security system in this country called Falcon Eye. From the Falcon Eye, I have been to Falcon Eye. I've seen I've seen the capacity of Nigerian security network and intelligence. And I can tell you for a fact that there is no ship in Nigeria, whether docking, leaving, about to leave, that is not seen on Falcon Eye. There's none in the whole of the country. The Falcon Eye is so good that even the tiny ships at the bar beach can be caught on Falcon Eye. I've been to the room. It's not something I'm being told. There's immense security in this country. But the people entrusted with the security of our country are the problem. And there have been so many reports, so many petitions to the president, to the National Security Advisor, to the Minister of Defense, to the people who should be stopping crude oil theft in our country. But nothing has been done. So it simply means that, let me borrow the word of General T.Y. Danjuma, that they collude. They collude with the crude oil thieves to steal our crude. Because there's no way you can. Let me just give you a snippet of how this works. So crude is taken from the creeks, is taken through the various channels, and it goes to the high sea. So before, there used to be massive crude oil theft in the creeks, but they got some locals involved. They got some security companies involved. So they have a joint task force. Because if it is only the Navy, they can easily steal the crude. So in the creeks, it's no longer the Navy alone. So you have the Navy, you have the Civil Defense, you have the Nigerian Army, and you have the private security. So what this does is, when you have multiplicity of security people, it's more difficult to steal crude. Now, what they are doing is, when the crude leaves and gets to the high sea, that's where they do majority of the stealing. They also steal our crude at the metering level, because unfortunately, and I think the head of the NUPRC said something like this, that as a nation, it's a shame that we are not able to actually ascertain the level of crude oil that we produce. So they under-declare at the metering level. Okay. So that is also high-level crude oil theft.
We sit down, we talk about power, how we can make power work, then we start talking about crude oil, stopping the theft. It's a bit mind-boggling. Sure. Because, we're intelligent beings. And it's not a lack of ideas that's causing the problem. And it's not a lack of knowledge of what the issue is. It's the will to do the right thing. That's our problem. That's why I'm back down to accountability. Who is responsible for what? If there's a failure, hold that person accountable, or those people accountable. Things will change. I agree with everything you said, your advocacy, and I know it's important, but the issue is the will. It's the will and holding people accountable.
For me, it's very sad, to be honest. It's painful because I'm an economist, so we know how many millions of dollars we basically lose every day just because of this crude oil theft, right? And if we truly understand how massive, and I use the word massive, this problem is, we would take it more seriously. Do you know that if we're able to produce up to 2 million barrels per day, we may not be having the protests we're having? Then if we're able to now refine it in Nigeria, we'll certainly be in a better place. A
lot of us we're not looking at this direction. We'll focus on, elections and unemployment and all of those problems. But this is another course, right? And it was until Dangote came screaming and started protesting before everyone now said, wait, what's going on here? People started going to Malta. I mean, if you go on TikTok, it's people giving different breakdown, doing every investigation. And I feel that's where it starts from, because a thief can only thief freely when he knows that nobody's watching. Mm. And that's where the eyes of advocacy and journalism comes into play. How are we able to make sure that we educate people? Like, I just learned a lot from what he just said, when he was explaining how it works and how we do these things. We need a government, we need a leadership that have to come to that realization. There's nothing else to steal. You don't finish, right? We need to go back to how can we now rebuild? How can we can't loan money just to fund our lifestyle, to fund administration, to fund the National Assembly, to drive cars and have private chefs. We need to come back to the fact that we don't have that luxury right now, and make sure that we have people who are thinking of how can we rebuild this country from where it is.
But it boils down to the issue of the fact that the president must be willing to touch the untouchables, because the people who are doing the equatorial theft are actually, they are the, in quotes, owners of Nigeria.
The quick win is for the media to take over and tell us the story and educate us more on how this works.
We have laid all our cards on the table. Make what you will of it. Either way, the dialogue continues at this table and beyond, in search of a better society. Join us again, 8 p.m., same channel, next week. Till then, it's goodbye from all of us.
Adios. Adios.
Bye-bye.
One Nigeria.